In this session, we're going to look at le futur, the future tense, and we're going to look at all the ways of talking about events in the future. Now, one thing to know is that in French, just like English, there are three ways of talking about the future. The first of these is using the present tense with an adverb of time. For example, we meet tomorrow. The second is what we're going to say we're going to do in the immediate future. For example, we are going to meet. And the third one, and probably the most useful if you're going to aim for the higher grades at GCSE, is saying what we will do in the future. And this is used for plans that aren't quite so certain. For example, we will meet. Now let's have a look at this first one, the present tense plus the adverb of time. Now, the French use this actually quite a lot to talk about events in the future, so it is important that you learn how this is constructed. And really, in order to form this, there are two key ideas. The first one is that you need a present tense verb, and hopefully your understanding of conjugating these verbs is now pretty secure, having practiced it quite a lot since starting learning French. And the second thing that you need is an adverb of time. And before we get concerned about the complexity of a word like adverb, we're basically talking about phrases like tomorrow, in a few days, next week. So let's have a look at this as an example. We are playing football tomorrow. Hopefully you'll be able to recognize that the verb here is we are playing. And the adverb of time, the time phrase, is tomorrow. So let's have a look at that in French. And it really is exactly the same as we'd see it in English. Nous jouons au football demain. Nous jouons is of course an example of the present tense with jouer, the verb to play, and the time phrase demain means tomorrow. Let's have a look at another example. He's going on holiday next Tuesday. This time, can you recognize where's the verb and where is the adverb of time? Hopefully you've spotted that he is going is going to be the verb in this particular example, and next Tuesday will be the adverb of time. Again in French, il part en vacances mardi prochain. We use partir in its present tense form to show the example that we're using the present tense in French as in English. Now the second form, the immediate future, discusses sort of plans that are definitely going to happen. There's a real certainty there. And of the three future tenses, it's probably the most straightforward and easy to use. We call it the going to future because the verb used for this is the verb to go. Now to form the going to future, you need three parts. The first one is a subject, that's the person who does the verb, like I, you, he, she, etc. You're also going to need a part of the verb aller, which is the verb to go. And you're also going to need an infinitive. Now, just in case you've forgotten what an infinitive is, that's the form of the verb that we find in the dictionary. Now, in previous sessions looking at the perfect tense with être and avoir, you've been advised to learn avoir and être off by heart. The same thing goes for learning how to do the going to future. You are going to have to learn aller off by heart in order to be able to form it. But fortunately, it's pretty easy to remember. Je vais, I am going. Tu vas, you are going. Il va and elle va, he is going and she is going. Nous allons, we are going. Vous allez, you are going. Ils vont and elles vont, they are going. Now let's look at some examples of these and how we fit them together. So for example, if you were trying to say, I am going to drink, you're going to follow this in a few easy steps. Firstly, we're going to look at the verb to drink in our dictionary to find our infinitive form. And in this case, the verb is boire. Secondly, we're going to add a part of aller. Now we're looking for the I part of the verb, and we learnt from our previous table that I am going is je vais. And the simple thing we do now is we put the two together. So I am going to drink, je vais boire. The same thing happens with we are going to swim. Step 1, we're going to find the verb to swim in the dictionary. This time the verb is nager. Secondly, we're going to find a part of the verb aller. And referring to our table on the previous slide, we're going to see we are going is nous allons. And finally, like we did in the previous example, we're going to put the two together. We are going to swim, nous allons nager. Now, the third and final way to talk about the future, as I say, is the one which is probably the most important if you're going to push towards the higher grades at GCSE. It is actually pretty easy to form when you've got used to practicing it. It uses the infinitives of verbs again, which we've already talked about, and the key to this is that we add some special endings. As ever, though, with French, there's always one or two important exceptions that just simply need to be learned. So, how do we form it? Well, for verbs that find in the dictionary ending in ER and IR, you don't actually really change anything to them at all. You simply add a correct ending. For verbs that end RE, you have to take off the E first, and then you add the same endings we've already talked about onto the letter R that's left. So let's look at this in practice. Parler is the verb to speak. Let's imagine we've looked this up in our dictionary, and in actual fact we haven't changed anything to it at all. We've just written the verb out 6 times, all the different parts of it. All we're going to do now is put an ending on this word. So I will speak, je parlerai. We put an IAI on the end of parler. Tu parleras, il, elle, on parlera. This time it's just an A rather than AS. Nous parlerons, vous parlerez, and il and elle parleront. Now, for some of you who are really quite learned in your understanding of verbs in French, will notice that the je, tu, il, elle, and then the they forms, il and elle, all look fairly familiar to you. And yes, that's right, they're actually part of the verb avoir. And don't forget, when you translate these all back into English, every single one of them is going to translate as will speak. I will speak, you will speak, he or she will speak, we will speak, you will speak, they will speak. Now, unfortunately, as I spoke about earlier, there are some exceptions to this particular rule. Although the endings, the AI, AS, A, ONS, EZ, ONT, stay the same, you actually need to learn some different stems this time. So we don't just keep the infinitive as we find it in the dictionary. Unfortunately, there is no rule behind this. You just simply need to learn them. And here are some key exceptions. It's not all the examples, but these are the ones you're probably going to come across most likely in your studies. Aller changes to ir. So j'irai would be I will go. Avoir to or. Être to ser. Faire to faire. Savoir to sors. Devoir to devre. And pouvoir to pour. You will need to learn these examples as you go on in your French studies. So let's have a look at a few examples just to get a feel for how this works. Je sortirai. Well, if you look at that, if you take the AI, you've got the verb sortir that you would find typically in the dictionary. So je sortirai is I will go out. Il mangera, you should recognize the verb manger, to eat. It's got the A finish at the ending, and it also has il. So il mangera, he will eat. Nous prendrons. Now notice this time, this is the verb prendre, to take. We've lost the E because this is an RE verb, and as we said, endings always need to latch on to the letter R. So nous prendrons, we will take. And finally, elles feront. Well, why do we choose this as an example? Well, it starts with FER, and we know that's one of the irregular ones. It's the verb faire that's changed to its irregular stem of FER. Elles feront, they will do. And now let's look at this the opposite way. I will win. Well, imagine you looked at the verb win in the dictionary, you'd find the verb gagner. You know that I is je, and we know that the ending for the future with will is AI. And because we've got an R at the end, we can just latch it onto the end. I will win, je gagnerai. He will finish. Well, this is an IR verb, finir. It ends with the IR, so all we do is put a natural ending which goes with il. In this case, it's an A. So he will finish, il finira. Now, we will drink uses the verb boire. This is an RE verb. So can you remember what you need to do with these? That's right. You take the E off first to leave yourself with an R on which you need to latch the ending. So we will drink, the new ending is ONS. Nous boirons. And finally, they will be. Well, être should be ringing some alarm bells because we know it's in our list of irregular verbs. Être becomes SER. And the ending which goes with they is ONT. So putting those two together gives us they will be, ils seront. So to summarize this session on the future tense, we've got 3 ways to talk about the future. The first requires the present tense and an adverb of time. The second is the going to future, that's the verb aller plus an infinitive. And the third is what we call the will future. And if we can remind ourselves, the will future requires a few things. It firstly needs the infinitive, but if the verb is an RE verb, you take the E off first. And it needs a correct ending, depending on who does the verb.